14 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few running backs I would start this week. The first guy, Antonio Gibson of the Washington football team. So Gibson's got a good matchup. Not on paper, but I still think it's a good matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys, who give up the second least amount of fantasy points to running backs on the season. But the last 3 out of 4 games, Gibson's been a top performer each and every week almost for fantasy owners. Week 10 versus Tampa, 24 carries, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 catches, 14 yards. Week 11 at Carolina in that one for him, 19 carries, 95 yards, a fumble loss. And then the last 2 weeks here, he's went off. Week 12 versus Seattle, 29 carries, 111 yards, 7 catches, 35 yards, and a 2-point conversion. And week 13 at the Raiders, 23 carries, 88 yards, 5 grabs for 23 yards and a touchdown. So right here, Gibson throughout his career, he's been pretty solid in his young career versus the Dallas Cowboys. We saw it last season in his rookie year, and I think we're going to see it again in his first matchup of the season versus Dallas. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him get anywhere from 15 to at least 20 fantasy points this week as Gibson. And he's definitely a running back I would start this week. The next running back is Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. So Williams as the lead man and pretty much the only back last week versus the Kansas City Chiefs. He took full advantage of that matchup and had a huge fantasy day in that one. 23 carries, 102 yards. And he added 6 catches, 76 yards with a touchdown. So Melvin Gordon, we know he missed the game last week. And Javonte Williams, the last few games, has picked it up and playing great football. Week 10 versus Philly, 8 carries, 48 yards, 2 catches for a yard. Week 12 versus the Chargers, 14 carries, 54 yards, a touchdown, and added 3 catches, 57 yards. And then last week, like I mentioned, at Kansas City, 102 rush yards, 6 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown. So right here, good receiver out of the backfield. A little surprising to me that he's pretty much a 3-down back and a guy with good receiving skills. Here is Williams, and this week he's got a cupcake matchup versus the Detroit Lions that give up the 4th most fantasy points to running back. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Williams have another big game this week, and he's a must-start guy even if Gordon's back and splitting. The next, Clyde Edwards-Helaire of the Kansas City Chiefs. So for the most part, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been banged up this season, missing week 6 all the way to week 10, but the last few games for him since he returned. Week 11 versus Dallas, 12 carries, 63 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches, 13 yards. And then last week versus Denver, 14 carries, 54 yards, 3 catches, 28 yards. So a mediocre PPR day it was for him in week 13. But week 14, he's got a great matchup versus the Vegas Raiders that give up the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs on the season. And it wouldn't surprise me here to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this one have probably 100 total yards and possibly find the end zone. And he's a running back I would start this week because the Raiders stop no one on the ground. And the next running back is Devonta Freeman of the Baltimore Ravens. So Devonta Freeman, he's taken over that job and not looking back right now in the backfield here for this Raven team. The last few games here for Freeman, week 11 in Chicago, 16 carries, 49 yards, a touchdown, 6 catches, 31 yards. Week 12 versus Cleveland, 16 carries, 52 yards, a catch for 8 yards. And week 13 at Pittsburgh, 14 carries, 52 yards, a touchdown, and 5 catches, 43 yards. So right here, week 14, not the greatest of matchups at Cleveland, but right now he's the lead dog over there, is Freeman in the backfield for Baltimore. We saw Murray sprinkled in. He had a couple receptions in that game. But right now, Freeman, he's getting about 15, 18 touches a game. And Lamar Jackson and this offense, they believe in Freeman. So right here, he's definitely a running back that I would start this week, and a guy who's getting a good workload and on volume alone is a decent start. And the 5th and final running back I would start this week is Trevor Hubbard. So now Christian McCaffrey out for the season here, and Trevor Hubbard filling in early in the year. He's had some good games, and this week he's got a great matchup versus the Falcons that give up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. So the few games Hubbard started for Christian McCaffrey, week 5 versus Philly, 24 carries, 101 yards, 5 catches, 33 yards. Week 6 versus Minnesota, 16 carries, 61 yards, a touch, a catch for 4 yards. And week 7 at the Giants, 12 carries, 28 yards, 4 catches, 28 yards. And week 8 at Atlanta, 24 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown and a catch for 9 yards with a fumble loss. So right here, he could put in the work. He's Hubbard, a decent receiver out of the backfield, and a guy who could handle 15 to 20 carries. And I think here versus a weak Atlanta defense, they're going to expose him in this one, and he's going to have a good ball game. So that's a few running backs I would start here for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.